love playing World of Warcraft, but I've never really taken the time to discover all it has to offer. And given the time I've been playing, I am incredibly embarrassed at how little achievements I have collected over the years. And so I have made the decision to change that. Coincidentally, it was Children's Week, and this was the perfect opportunity to start. Achievements on the list. Of course, for the children. This is the main achievement of the week. It rewards the player the title of matron or patron, and to complete it, we have to get about 5 other achievements: Home Alone, Daily Chores, Hail to the King Baby, Bad Example, and Aw, Isn't It Cute? Which, lucky me, is one that I did manage to get some years ago. I also wanted to make sure to collect Trader's Tender as they had some limited time activities for this event. But first, we have to get an orphan. We find Orphan Matron Nightingale in Cathedral Square in Stormwind. Picking up her quest gives us our first orphan whistle, and Randis appears. Randis wants to visit a few different places and gives us 3 quests to start with. First, we head over to Stormwind's embassy to complete the first one. Then, we head on over to Old Ironforge, where Randis wants to pay tribute to King Magni Bronzebeard. After finding the High Seat, we need a moment to reread the quest and realize we need to actually be beneath the High Seat and find a conveniently out-of-sight hallway which leads us to our destination. Lastly, Randis wants to go to Westfall and rent a chopper for a ride. One quick drive through a tornado later, we can turn in this quest as well. Next, Randis would like to fly a kite, which sends us back to Stormwind. But it is here that I remembered the whole point of this, the actual achievements, and so we go for the easiest one on the list, Home Alone. One quick Hearthstone later, we're in Silvermoon City, but we've gotten our first achievement on the list. This is also where it becomes very obvious just how advantageous it is to be doing this with a mage, since I can then just quickly teleport back to Stormwind.
Before flying the kites, we make a quick stop at the magical ice cream vendors to buy a cone of cold, which we eat together with Randis to complete one more quest.
Now we go ahead to find Craggle Wobbletop, who walks around the canals of Stormwind and sells the kites. We quickly buy those, find a nicely open spot next to the water, and fly the kites together, which Randis seems to really enjoy. One more quest done and another is given. This time, we head back to Craggle to buy a sword rack. We bring it back to Matron Nightingale in Cathedral Square for all the other orphans to enjoy. And that concludes Randis' questline in Stormwind. After a quick outfit change, we teleport to Old Dalaran in Northrend to find Matron Arya. We get another orphan whistle, and this time our orphan is named Rue. Rue also has 3 starting quests, taking us to different places in Northrend. Unfortunately for me, I never really played through the Wrath of the Lich King campaign, and as such have never really been in Northrend. I say unfortunately, because to find the first location we wanted to visit, I followed the quest's directions, which was to teleport back to Stormwind and then take the ship back to, you guessed it, Northrend. So after a scenic boat ride, we finally made our way to the first location, Waterfin Retreat. We were immediately met with a Murloc in a top hat who had a dance party with Rue, which concluded our first quest. We then headed to the Bronze Dragon Shrine. There, we met Rue from the future and completed that quest as well, before making our final stop at the biggest tree I have ever seen and got attacked very impolitely, might I add. After turning in this final quest, Rue wanted to go see Alexstrasza in the Dragon Wastes. And again, not reading the quest and running around like an idiot for longer than I will admit, we flew to the top and found the Mother of Dragons. She, unfortunately, did not transform into her dragon form, despite being asked very nicely by Rue. On our way to the next stop, I was again reminded that I had never visited Northrend, when while we were flying and enjoying the beautiful view, these annoyingly loud horns started sounding. And when I finally turned my UI back on, I noticed right on time that we were flying in a no-fly zone. And then we were unceremoniously dropped mid-air with only a parachute, which led us to faceplant into a bridge. Anyway, we made it to Shaper's Terrace, where Rue was able to meet a great one. After that, we were good to head back to Dalaran, where Rue also wanted us to buy a toy and play fetch, before returning to Matron Arya to complete the final quest. Since I was mainly focused on getting my trader's tender, I went to Boralis next to do the orphan quest over there. I found Matron Westerson and got my next orphan whistle. To clear the first 3 quests, we went to the Roughneck camp, where Liam rode a baby griffin, which was honestly so adorable. Then we went to the Squid Shrine, where we took a tour with one of the mages in the water cyclone. And lastly, we met some pirates outside of Freehold, who gave Liam his very own little pirate hat. Next up, we visited the mountains to meet a druid who showed off his shape-shifting talents, before heading to Aram's stand and talking to a falconer and his falcon, Winston. It was then time to return to the city and drop Liam back off at the orphanage to receive our final reward. And while I was looking around to see where I wanted to head next, I noticed I'd received mail from Rue. It was a cute letter essentially giving us an update on how Rue was doing, and in it, we got a special pet as a reward, a curious oracle hatchling, our very own little Rue. It was time to continue on collecting these well-loved figurine rewards, and so we headed to the city of Shatarath to find Matron Mercy. This time we meet Dorna, a Draenei orphan who, you guessed it, wanted us to take her to 3 places. First, we head to the Ring of Occurrence, where we get our first glimpse of Dorna's magical powers. She seems different to the other orphans we have met so far, but there isn't much time to think about it as we are up in the skies again, heading to our next stop, Eris Landing. In Eris Landing, we find Jill, a friend of Dorna, who we quickly say hello to before once again moving on. This time, we're headed to the Dark Portal. And I must say, flying around Outland is such a beautiful experience. Just look at the sky around us. It is breathtaking. At the Dark Portal, we complete the quest and accept the next one, which takes us to the Exodar. And during one of my brighter moments, I very confidently walked to the Dark Portal, fully expecting to get through it and continue from there. Except I face-planted into a wall. Then I turned around and found the actual portal, which took us back to Stormwind, only to then realize that I am playing my mage for a reason and teleporting to the Exodar. After running down a never-ending spiral walkway, we stand before Oros, who recognizes that Dorna is a very special child. Again, there is this feeling that something is off, or rather, these ancient beings seem to know a lot more about Dorna than even she herself does. We receive Oros' blessing and begin the journey back up. Next, we visit a shaman trainer, and we are shown again just how strong Dorna's magical abilities are, and the promise is made that the shaman trainer would help Dorna become one of his students. Then, as the last place we go to before bringing Dorna back to Shatarath, we visit the Cavern of Times. And this is arguably the most interesting thing to have happened throughout all of these orphan quests. As we arrive, the guards charge Dorna. It is the golden dragon Zaladormu who stops them and says the following: "This girl has done nothing and will not be held accountable for what she might do or fail to do in the future." After that, we are free to go, and we head to a nearby vendor to buy a toy dragon before ultimately heading back to Shatarath and dropping Dorna back off. I'm very curious to see if we will meet Dorna again someday in the future and what her role might be, knowing what Zaladormu said. But after turning in our last quest, we finally complete the challenge for the trader's tender. So I took a quick look at the remaining achievements, which were the majority of them, and decided to start working on those before potentially picking up more orphan quests. So I teleported back to Stormwind and picked up the daily fishing and cooking quests, went fishing, and turned them back in while Dorna was summoned. This left us with 3 more dailies to complete for the achievement Daily Chores. I then headed over to the Children's Week vendor in Cathedral Square to use my well-loved figurines to purchase Egbert and Willie to progress the Veteran Nanny achievement. And then we got to the achievement Hail to the King, baby. To get this one, we needed to defeat King Imran in Utgard Pinnacle with our orphan out. Now, one thing you must know about me, I have never really been into the whole dungeons and raids mechanic of this game. I've always really just enjoyed leveling and going through different stories. I've only recently started doing more dungeons, and only the quote-unquote older ones that I can solo by myself to collect transmog and mounts and stuff like that. I'm sharing all of this because for anybody who does do dungeons and raids, the following footage might hurt. I knew that this achievement was a dungeon, but I wasn't sure which one. And instead of Googling it, I opened the dungeon guide and looked up King Imiron. And the first result I get is King Imiron in the Maw of Souls. I do not register my crucial mistake and went to that dungeon. I entered, blew my orphan whistle, started cutting down mobs, and realized that Imiron was actually the first boss. I did not think that this was a little weird, and instead took it as convenience. So I defeated King Imiron, made my way through the rest of the dungeon, and left, only to see that the achievement was still not completed. Confusion set in. I went back into the dungeon, but of course it needed time to reset. And so I was convinced that the game had bugged out. Maybe it didn't register because I one-shotted Imiron. Who knows? I sure didn't. And so, slightly frustrated, I decided to move on, and I would come back after the dungeon had reset. I then decided to finish a somewhat easier achievement, the bad example one, and headed back to Amy in Old Dalaran to buy the needed sweets. I sat down to eat them one by one, being rudely interrupted by a dinosaur's butt and having to change camera angles. I then went back to do the same dailies in Stormwind and completed those with Dorna out to reach 4 out of 5 for the daily chores achievement. Finally, I continued to find the needed snacks to finish the bad example achievement, for which I ended up buying from the auction house because I did not have time to level up my Northrend cooking skill and make those final 2 items myself. To start finishing up my remaining tasks, I headed to the matron in training, Olna, in Dornagal, to accept her orphan questline. First, we got Skibbles, who I think might be my favorite of all the orphans. She's so ridiculously cute. But Skibbles wants us to go to Hallowfall to look at Belladar, which is a breathtaking sight. We then head over to the reserves, where Skibbles receives some on-the-spot training before heading to a nearby vendor to find the perfect candle. We then switch orphans and meet Destian, who really wants to talk to Nerubians. So we head to the Weaver's Lair and talk to some Nerubians. We also show off our weaving skills. Destian has a time of his life when we turn in his final quest to Olna, and then we get our next orphan, Randis, a little spider who really wants to go to Undermine. And so we take the rocket ride to Undermine, sign our documents, stop at the food stall, and eventually visit a school. There, our little spider shows off his engineering, and the teacher promises to figure out a way to have Randis come study there. This is where we meet our last orphan, Kitty, and she really wants to see the Stormrooks in Dornagal, so back up we go. And when meeting the Stormrooks for the first time, Kitty decides that she wants to make a toy for them. We collect the ingredients, borrow the super large hammer, and return to present the gift. Safe to say, the Stormrooks really liked it. And this is where our questline for Dornagal ends. We return back to Olna and see that every orphan's dream is being set into motion as the people we've met have returned to keep their promises. It is also here where we receive our final well-loved figurine, which allows us to purchase the Elec training collar and complete the Veteran Nanny achievement. This meant that I was super close to getting the matron title from completing the For the Children achievement. All I needed was to turn in my 5th daily quest with my orphan out, which was done quickly enough and got me the daily chores achievement. And then all that remained was hail to the king, baby. King Imiran. Still convinced that my earlier theory of the game bugging out because I one-shotted him was correct, I made my way back to the Maw of Souls. I brought my orphan out, double-checked that I had the correct boss for this achievement, and went in. I allowed some combat to take place and then went for it. Nothing. The achievement was still not done. I started losing my mind. I couldn't believe that I had done all of this just to have a bug keep me from getting the ultimate Children's Week achievement. Surely I could not be the only one, right? I finally decided to look it up, and lo and behold, it finally clicked. The achievement was saying it the entire time. Defeat King Imiron in Utgard Pinnacle, not in the Maw of Souls, Utgard Pinnacle. So anyway, I made my way to the correct dungeon this time, one-shotted Imiron, and finally got my achievement.